to bring up our other panelists for the next session. We have Daniel Goldscheider, who's the founder of the executive director of the OpenWallet Foundation, David Palmer, a blockchain lead for Vodafone, Maria Austenaa, for the head of digital identity for Visa, and then we have Andrew. And if you haven't seen a theme that's been happening throughout the day, all morning we talked about verified credentials and these ideas of being able to do delegated authority to the individual or the bot or machine or message. Come on, you guys come on up, take a seat. Bot or machine or message. And then we just talked about with Ellery and Allison about these credentials and these wallets. And all of these credentials have to go somewhere, and they're going to go into this app that's going to be sitting on the phone. And up until now, it's been a lot of proprietary code. And so in February, Daniel launched the OpenWallet Foundation. So let's start with that. What is the OpenWallet Foundation and why should we care?
Who here cares about wallets in particular? Okay, so I think the first question is why should you care about wallets, right? Because the OpenWallet Foundation has something to do with wallets. But here's why we care. Wallets are at the center of you being able to prove who you are. Wallets are going to be at the center of you proving that you are healthy, that you are allowed to enter a country or drive a car, that you actually graduated from university. Wallets are going to be at the center of you being able to pay for something. And the question is, who's going to control these wallets? Why is that important? Well, think about your physical wallet. It doesn't matter where you buy a physical wallet. It's basically a transaction. You pay £100 or dollars or euro for a wallet, and that's it. Your physical wallet has never tried to take data out of transactions. Your physical wallet has never tried to take money out of transactions. And your physical wallet never told you to buy a certain product or software. Well, in the digital space, that could be very, very different. In the digital space, depending on who owns that wallet, there will be different business models associated with that. So what we're trying to do is bring a community together of for-profit companies, non-profits, and public sector representatives to work on a healthy wallet ecosystem that hopefully gives you as consumers the choice to pick and choose the wallet you like with the business model and the incentives or lack thereof that you like.
And let me ask you a question though. So these wallets are out there, but you have a great example to help explain what the difference between a smart wallet is, or a digital wallet as they're known, and an open wallet. And and you use a browser analogy for that. So maybe you can explain that.
Yes. So hopefully you can see this. I think you can. From your end left side, you see how browsers are being constructed today. Doesn't matter which browser you use. Let's say you're using Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge or the Opera browser. All of those browsers are based on open standards, obviously, right? Just like GSM, just like 5G, every browser uses HTTP, HTML, JavaScript. You have open standards. But there is something interesting, which is between the open standards and the browsers, you have a layer of open source software. It doesn't matter which browser you use. Every browser uses open source code. Why? Well, one, it's cheaper. If you and I wanted to create a browser and we have to start from scratch, that's very expensive. If we can take a lot of libraries and basically get code to start with, that's going to be less expensive. Now, maybe you have all the money in the world and you don't care about saving money. You will also save time. And even if you have all the time and money in the world, it's going to be more secure. Because if we're using software and there is a security vulnerability, and any one of us fixes that vulnerability, we can all use that fix. And last but not least, it's going to help with interoperability, because even if everyone in this room is working on the same standards, but we interpret those standards differently, we may end up with solutions that have a lot of friction.
Okay, so we've got the open standards, WC3, et cetera. We have then this open source layer, and then we have the browser layer, like you've explained. Now, what's interesting, though, what you're trying to do, and what all of you are trying to do, because you're all part of this OpenWallet Foundation now, which was just launched in February of this year. I think Vodafone's not officially one yet.
No. So I've got my colleague Fraser King in here as well. It's not just me. So we've built a new platform called the Digital Asset Broker, which actually has a SIM wallet for the IoT devices. So we're working very closely, to make sure those wallets are interoperable. And we are in the process of going through
and being part of the association. Now, one of the interesting things about what you're doing differently with your Open Foundation versus, say, the browser world is controlled by basically two parties. It's called, you have open source software, but it's either Google and Chromium or Apple and WebKit. You're trying to do something different. And Marie and David, and even Andrew, like, why is that important to you to have multiple players in the consortium versus just like two? So maybe start with Marie. What's your?
Yeah, happy to comment. So of course we look at payment as being a very important use case for the wallets. It's kind of essential that you can store your payment credentials in whatever shape they come and whatever color they hold within a wallet that is secure, privacy protecting, and that the consumers have a choice. It's absolutely, in that sense, it's just essential. I think being locked into anything is always a concern. And we need to give the consumers the good choice that they deserve.
Yeah, I think similarly, as you just saw with the IDaaS activities that are happening, digital wallets are going to be a big thing. And it's almost like IDaaS has been designed to keep Apple and Google out, right? Because it's espousing portability, no lock-in, no proprietary stuff, all open source, and so on. So what I think is going to be really interesting is the interplay between the OpenWallet Foundation that we're members of as well, and this open source code base that's going to come out of IDaaS, and how that links together. Now, remember with IDaaS that governments they'll have to issue wallets to people, but they'll be able to either write their own, or they'll be able to commission somebody else to write their own, or they'll be able to certify other organizations to write them, and then they'll be certified and released. So there will be a very significant upswell of wallet building activity, and it's really important those wallets work properly. And when you combine the resources of the sort of people in OWF and working on this architecture reference framework for IDaaS and so on, we've at least got a chance. It's really complicated, isn't it? Really complicated.
And there is a huge difference between open source and open governance. A lot of people outside the industry confuse the two and say, oh, this is open source. This is great. This is really democratic. Well, open source means that you are writing something and I get to use it, but it doesn't mean that we're writing it together. So what the OpenWallet Foundation is trying to do is marry open source with open development and open governance, basically bringing different for-profit companies, non-profits, and government officials together to create a democratic, safe space where we can create the wallets we want jointly.
Okay. And David?
No, I just add, I was preparing for another conference I think 2 weeks ago. I said, how many wallets are there in the world, right? How many digital wallets are there? And by 2024, there'll be 4 billion digital wallets, right? 4 billion digital wallets. By 2030, I think the digital wallet projection is 5.6 billion. Now, if these wallets are going to be something that people need to access, then of course there's a mobile link. If these wallets, following eIDaaS 2.0, need to extend to devices as well as organization and people, then there needs to be a way to get them on there. But more importantly, if these wallets become a universal right, i.e. you need it to work, you need it to transact, you need it to go to university, or you need it to basically just go about your daily business, then it's something that needs to be universal. It needs to be an area where there's competition, where there's choice. And I think that's why it's important to keep it open.
And just two remarks on that too. Is like you just heard from Priyanka with the Red Cross, is even like refugees are getting this for the lower end phones to be able to be human beings and have dignity in that process and be effectively served by, receive humanitarian aid. Yeah?
Yeah, we at Evelyn worked on a Red Cross project with them right early days, which itself was really interesting because it opens your eyes to these different use cases. It's not all relatively rich people in a nice room in Accountants Hall in London, right? You've got to think of all the other use cases, and you've got to think about elderly relatives who can't use it, or refugees traveling, or kids, or whatever else it may be. And it's really, really complicated. I think shout out to Timothy at the back of the room there, who founded Evonym with Jason Law and created the first digital wallet for credentials in 2017 or something. And that was really hard. And what's even harder is making it work on a mass scale. We haven't even talked really about user interfaces. So there's a lot of talk about technology and protocols, but how do you know that the credential you get is good? What's the user ceremony that you're going to see? Right? We're used to now scanning a QR code or something, or tapping to pay. But there's going to be new ceremonies for tapping to prove or something like that. What's that going to look like? How do the credentials manifest on the screen of a phone? What happens when it goes wrong? So there's a whole bunch of tech stuff going on, but there should be 10 times that amount of work going around user interfaces and how those manifest.
One of the OpenWallet Foundation members is MOSIP, which is a non-profit out of India. And I love the conversations, with big tech companies and MOSIP on the same conference call, or people from the commission, and then MOSIP would say something like, okay, but what if the only thing you have is a QR code on a piece of paper? What if the only device you have is a feature phone and there are 6 people in the family sharing that feature phone to prove your identity? So I think the trick is going to be to bring different countries and use cases together and create solutions that will take advantage of the fancy 1,000-pound device you have most likely in your pocket, but also think through how this works in countries that don't have the same penetration. And I think this is really an opportunity to create a large tent and bring people from different sectors in different countries together to solve a problem that is truly critical. Identity is a little bit like oxygen. You don't really think about oxygen, right? It's so clear that we can prove who we are, but you really realize the importance of oxygen when you don't have it. And I think that's exactly how identity works.
Well, and I want to come back to something David said too. And is Jamie Smith in the room somewhere? He's a colleague of Andrew's at Gen. And he refers to the wallet as the 5th mass media. I refer to it as the 9th mass media. It just depends on what side of the marketing you're going to do it. But at some level, this will become the primary channel. And if you go back to my earlier keynote this morning, the next generation business metric is the number of verified connections. Where's that verified connection going to come from? It's going to be initiated from my wallet. I'm going to opt into you, the business, from my wallet. And my relationship with you will be managed from this wallet. And as soon as I don't like you anymore, I don't trust you anymore, I'm going to cut you off. So what's your reaction to that, Marie, when you hear people having that kind of control with their data and their relationship with a business like Visa? And especially, too, is it just about Visa, or is it about your partners, too, and that network? And how is that all going to work within your model?
It's a great question, Michael. And I think that's one of the complexities of what we're trying to accomplish both within EIDAS, and Visa is part of the large-scale pilots in EIDAS as well, because it's complicated and fun. But the second, what's so complementary is the OpenWallet Foundation, because we're not building a product. We are building an ecosystem. We are building that relies on the capability of the consumers to have those choices and to be actively involved in what do they want to share with whom. But by being able to decide what to share with whom, they need to have credentials. I know it's a complicated word, but there need to be proofs about them that they can hold. Who provides those proofs? How do you know that you can rely on that proof? How do you know the integrity of the wallet? So, for payment, we've kind of solved it by bringing the banks that gives you the cards, the issuers, with the merchants that you can use your card in, right? We've kind of brought them together through rules and infrastructure and super hard work over 60 years plus, but it works and it's reliable. But I think when it comes to the wallet, this is orders of magnitude more complex, which means that we have to work together. We have to have a place to experiment with different types of code, make it open source to share it with everybody. We need to have the interactions with the Commission on what does the regulation mean, how is it going to make it workable for everybody. So I think this is essentially, and it's complementary, but it's also essential that we have these arenas, because this is complex. How do you operationalize W3C verifiable credentials? You know, it's a lot of things about it. At scale, exactly. At scale.
And when we're talking about these credentials, it's both this afternoon's credentials, I as an individual, Michael Becker, but it's also the credentials of I as Michael Becker, the CEO of a company or an advisor to MEF or whatever other relationship I may have. All of those different personas, if you will, verifiable personas, if you will be existing within this wallet, no?
And then the personas are just one aspect. So you will have your car keys in your wallet, and your room keys, and your hotel keys, and your cryptocurrencies, and your CBDCs, and your healthcare information, and probably your FIDO pass keys. So for all those
username,
reasons,
passwords.
Yeah, username, password replacement, hopefully. And the complexity is both technical as well as regulatory. Technical because the room keys I mentioned and the digital car keys, even though they both open physical doors, use different standards. One is a standard from the Car Connectivity Consortium, the other one is an IETF standard. And the people behind those standards don't even like talking to each other that much. So the same is true, of course, with cryptocurrencies. There's so many different standards. And then you have the regulatory complexity. So on one axis, you have all the technical standards. On the y-axis, you have all the regulatory frameworks. And of course, even different countries within the EIDAS 2 may have slightly different interpretations of the EIDAS 2. And of course, Europe has a very different idea than the Department of Homeland Security, maybe.
By the way, as a newly minted MEF member, you get to write that white paper on that vertical horizontal architecture. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Real quick, though, just as we kind of wrap things up. David, so earlier Stefan Wolf had talked about this idea of the difference between decentralized and, what was the word I'm looking for?
Centralized.
What? Well, it's decentralized, centralized, but also distributed, like the distributed ledger type models. I mean, you're a blockchain guy. Is this all about blockchain? Is it not? Where does that play into these wallet concepts too?
So I think, I mean, of the 4 billion wallets that are around today, I'd say a fraction of them are Web3 blockchain wallets. Although a lot of the innovations on wallets are coming from the Web3 side. But I mean, in terms of the role it plays, I think blockchain, and the WC3 DID standards have gone a long way towards sort of showing how it can be done. I think Evanim were one of the first. I had calls with them in 2017 on the same thing. But I think this is a lot bigger, and it will involve Web3 because I think you've got to have some decentralized trust. It's global. I mean, even with EIDAS, that's Europe, but then you've got North America, you've got developing countries. So unless you have a means of having consensus and trust and some cryptography, which is quantum proof and can be trusted, then it won't work, right? This is going to be too big because what we're forgetting here is the wallet is just software. And the wallet will indeed be your interface, like your computer screen, to the world of finance and everything. But it's also a process because the wallet doesn't work unless I can go to a store and prove my identity and buy something, or I can go to a financial agency and get a mortgage or a loan, and the process is there at the other end. It's just the front end, right? So this essentially has the potential to revolutionize how we rent cars, how we go through borders, how we interact with the financial institutions, everything in an automated way. No more paper, because the paper doesn't make sense anyway, right? Because it's all digital fundamentally. But to do that, you need to have trust and you need to have a process, a mechanism where you can verify those credentials in a trusted way. I believe that that's blockchain's role.
Well, and a core piece of that is my granular control. I get to choose what layers of data I can.
Self-sovereignty is a key part, but it's about how you verify those credentials. So they need to be issued. So I think there's a big role for telcos, banks, governments in issuing credentials, but the verification of them and the self-sovereignty and the control of it and the data, there needs to be an independent trust mechanism. I think that's where blockchain plays a role. Yeah, I think that's the infrastructure. Of
And
trust
again,
that
and
will
then
go
from the
across.
morning, it's also companies issuing them to their employees and to their other delegated authorities. Yeah, Andrew?
Yeah, so I'd like everyone to get away from worrying about blockchains. It's very 2016 when everyone wanted to know about this new thing we had, which was identity on the blockchain. This blockchain concept or ledger concept, what you need somewhere to store a bunch of keys that can be accessed by anyone at any time. Okay? It could be your laptop. If everyone trusts your laptop, we can store the keys on your laptop. And if you're a good guy and you're not going to fiddle about with them. So you need a secure store for key information that allows anyone at any time in the world to verify a credential is authentic. And that store can be anything. Now, it happens that ledgers, blockchains, have some really good characteristics, right? They're run by many organizations, hopefully. So it's hard for one organization to unilaterally turn it off. Right? They're chronologically ordered, so you know you've got the latest public key or whatever it is you're looking for. And they're highly secure. But that could be true of a number of things as well. So I would say let's not worry too much about whether something's on a ledger or not on a ledger, right? Think about the mechanisms and the human processes that are in place to ensure that you can trust wherever that store is and the people who design that store. And if it's a ledger, happy days. And if it's not, possibly also happy days.
We have a question, all right? Can we get one question in the back somewhere? Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to get to you first.
Tim Langford, Digital. I'm interested just in the connection between what you talked about here and CBDCs and whether this is an enabling technology for that potential and
But central bank digital currencies.
Yeah, so potentially everything you're talking about could still be held privately by choosing your wallets and nothing to do with government knowing all this. And there's been so much about the importance of privacy, and yet the threat story about that is that it's everything but privacy.
So from the IDAS perspective, there's no functionality being built to put a central bank digital currency token capability in IDAS wallets at the moment, but that's not to say it can't come, because there's lots of people looking at it. But it's a secure thing to store stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you've got two types of central bank digital currencies, wholesale and retail. Right? So wholesale goes through the banks, the intermediaries. Retail is a direct channel, potentially between central banks and your wallet. And you're absolutely right. I mean, some of the discussions with CBDCs are, they can know exactly how much is in your wallet, potentially how you spend it, et cetera. And I think that's where, things like, as Murray mentioned, self-sovereignty, controls, encryption, and these types of technologies can help. Zero-knowledge proofs is another one, where essentially it will give you some protection against the control. But there is also the potential that if you have a wallet and the currency is put in there, that they can restrict where you spend, how you spend, et cetera. So it is something that needs to be managed. But on the potential side, if you go back to COVID, it would have allowed them to get the money into people's wallets very easily.
And it's easy to forget that we actually have a global audience. And so we were getting some questions in from our global audience too. So one is, can you speak to the usability of the EIDAS 2.0 wallets? And as you might imagine, I'm interested in building desktop mobile applications. Like, is EIDAS just mobile, or can it go on a desktop? I mean, what's happening with those standards?
Yeah, very interestingly, actually, everyone thinks it's going to be a mobile app, but there are some different options allowed by the legislation, including like a hybrid mobile cloud solution and then a sort of cloud only. So there's been pretty much zero work done on the user interface side of it at the moment. There is going to be a lot more work done, and the pilots are there to test various concepts out. However, if you're thinking about like the Apple mechanism or Samsung, where you can have access to your wallet from multiple different devices, there are restrictions in IDAS that will stop that happening for certain types of credentials, like this PID credential. It's not portable, it's bound to the device, right? So that'll have to sit on the device. But other types of credentials could be. So it's can I say TBC at the moment?
Yeah, all right. So we had one other question here. We heard this morning, Timothy Ruff, about a difference between the base technical standards for verified credentials, the semantics of transaction interactions between participants using digital wallets, such as EIDS, and the adoption scale of it working. It usually is because, who within the EIDS wallet trials will define these ceremonies and procedures? So how is this basically going to work? Maria and...
Yeah, so our approach to wallets, whether it's, particularly the IDAS wallet, let's focus on that one, is to make sure that it is an evolution. We need to start with the current infrastructure. We need to start with making sure that it can work in paying, in-store, online, and that it is sufficiently secure and user-friendly, and that it can hold existing payment tokens, whether those are cards or whether these are account tokens. But we have to start with the existing infrastructure. I think throwing away how the users are used to paying today and how the point of sales terminals in store, for example, it's not going to happen. Then it'll take us too long to get there. So we need to build on what's available, make sure that user experience is in a way that is easily transferable from today. And then we can look at evolution and solving new kind of payment use cases, lots of excitement on embedded finance and so forth. But at least we look at the kind of the digital payment technology of today, like the tokens that can be held within the wallets, and then you have the challenges of access to NFC in person, or at least get acceptance for e-com transactions.
And one last question. So Daniel, I see only big kids up on the stage here. Is this a big kid game, or can startups and entrepreneurs play this? And do they have to write a big check to be able to participate with you, or in the OpenWallet Foundation in this growing community, or is it more open than that?
No, big tech. The only thing we care about is money. This is just a ploy. No, so the truth is anyone will be able to use code free of charge, and you don't have to be a member to use OpenWallet code. Anyone will be able to contribute code free of charge without having to be a member. So on the code side, there is no business model. The only intent is to bring people together who share the conviction that wallets should not be something where we necessarily have to compete on the base technology, but where open source software really benefits everyone. On the governance side, we have non-profit members, government members, and for-profit members. Non-profit organizations join the OpenWallet Foundation free of charge as members if they like. We have 20 non-profits announced, and we're going to announce a few more next week. And we have a governmental advisory council, which we actually stole from ICANN and are trying to copy as well as we can. And Ruth Puente, who managed that at ICANN, is actually managing this at the OpenWallet Foundation. And on the for-profit side, everyone is welcome. And it's basically, there is a membership fee for for-profit companies that want to join, and it's based on employees. So Vodafone and Visa, unfortunately, are at the high end of that scale. I think you're also on the high end of that scale. Come to think of it,
you've got your money off us.
So it's yeah. But if there is anyone here from a startup, we also have a scale with.
Yeah, so it's really open to everyone. Is my point. That's what I wanted to get across.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And
Sorry, Michael. One question here.
Yeah, please. I was just going to say. Yeah.
You may not know the answer to this question, but I'm curious, and this may have a little bit more to do with Andy's presentation, but there's a requirement in EIDAS for the wallet to be certified. I'm curious, what is the thinking behind that? And I'm hoping it's not a security reason. I'm hoping it's some other administrative or business reason, but what is the thinking behind needing to certify the wallet?
Yeah, so that is indeed a requirement for a government to issue a wallet or a private sector organization to provide one. It will have to be a certified wallet, and that will be certified by some certification bodies who will have to figure out what they're doing in the next 2 years. What's the rationale behind that? So I think they want to make sure that these wallets aren't doing bad things like nicking your data, okay? Or being able to impersonate you, or setting up connections that you don't want. So that's the sort of rationale behind it. And there was a big fight quite early on about unique wallet identifiers, which you'd have loved, Timothy, actually. Imagine if we had Daniel and Jason in the room talking to European Commission people about unique wallet identifiers.
Super cookies.
Super cookies. I did have a slide there. However, they were trying to say every wallet needs a unique identifier that is revealed every time you use it. And some of us in this room will know how nightmarish that is. So that they're trying to make sure that wallets don't misbehave.
Yeah, but Mike, does every wallet have to be EIDAS though? And then that's the last question.
Only EIDAS wallets need to be EIDAS.
Right. So I want to make sure that point. Let's not mix that up.
Exactly.
Right.
So let's just be really clear. This EIDAS thing that I'm up here to talk about, any wallet that is going to take a government EIDAS credential, to be very specific, will have to be an EIDAS certified wallet. And it will be able to tell whatever it's connecting to that it's an EIDAS certified wallet.
But all these other billions of wallets, not necessarily. All
You
right.
can create any wallet for anything.
So on that note, sorry, Ian, I'm getting the rope, so you can ask the question at the break. Okay? All right. Thank you very much, everyone. This is fantastic.